Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we're going to be doing a Deep Rock Galactic tier list. This is going to be my first Deep Rock Galactic tier list. I've been playing this game for quite a while recently, I think about the last year and a half or so, but I haven't been making a whole bunch of videos about it, so I figured I would start off doing a tier list, and this is going over the passive perks. How good are they, and what classes are they best for, really, or more specific uses? We'll be ranking them from S to D, D being pretty bad, they need some sort of buff, or they're very niche, they don't always fit everybody, and S just being they're great on everyone. So let's go through them and discuss each of them. The first one is called Born Ready. This one makes it so any of your unequipped weapons reload automatically. At tier 1 it's at 15 seconds, tier 2 it's at 10 seconds, and tier 3 it's at 5 seconds. So whichever weapons you don't have equipped will reload automatically. So this reload also counts towards certain equipment like the flare gun and the platform gun. It will also reload, so you can keep that in mind as well. It's kind of useful. Being able to reload any of your weapons when they're not equipped is sort of good. The best weapons I find to use this with are the autocannon from the gunner, because you can simply reload it faster just by unequipping it than actually going through the reload animation, because it takes longer than 5 seconds. You can also use it reasonably well on Engineer too, with their grenade launcher and with the breach cutter. Both of those have a fairly long reload time, and you might not be able to reload them very quickly, so you might just, fire the shot off from the grenade launcher or something, switch back to your shotgun or submachine gun, whatever it might be. Then you can use it. However, this doesn't work with every weapon. If you have the automatic reload with the double barrel shotgun for Scout, doesn't work. If you're using a weapon that just doesn't reload, like the minigun or the cryo gun or cryo cannon, that doesn't work, or the plasma pistol, those weapons don't work, so you can't really make the most use of them. I only really use this perk on gunner because I use the autocannon quite a bit. Outside of that, I generally don't use it. Like I said, you can use it with engineer. It's not bad there, but it is a very niche option, because I never take this with like Scout. You can just reload faster. I never take this with Driller because it's just not necessary. It does have some use, but it's pretty much like one of those perks that you take as a last one if you don't have anything else to take that you're really looking forward to. I would probably put it in C tier for the classes that can use it. If you're using anything like, let's say you're using the cryo gun and the plasma gun, then this one's absolutely bottom D tier because it just doesn't do anything for you. For everybody else, it does a little bit, but it's not that much. So I think C tier is okay for it. Not the best by any means. It's okay on certain people. There is also another thing about Born Ready that's kind of funny. If you're holding out a grenade in your hand, or if you have your pickaxe out, if you're just, spamming your pickaxe's hits, that still counts as you not having the weapons equipped, so you can reload your guns doing it. So if you're, mining gold, mining some nitro or whatever, you can still reload your guns, which is kind of cool. All right, so our next perk is Deep Pockets. This allows you to hold more valuables. So you get 5 more valuables at tier 1, 10 at tier 2, and 15 at tier 3. So you can hold more than the base 40 minerals that you normally would. This can be good on certain classes and certain specific boards. If you have something like Gold Rush and like Pots of Gold, it can just be a pretty nice quality of life thing. It can be okay on Scout as well, because Scout can zip line around and get to high up places where they just want to collect all the resources there, and then zip over to Molly or zip over to like the refineries or whatever it might be that you have to dump into it. It's okay on Scout. On everybody else, not as much. I'm never going to take this with like Engineer or Gunner. Driller maybe, because you can get to some hard to reach places with Driller, at least a little bit easier. This is just another quality of life passive. It's better than nothing because it does give you something, but you're not always going to use it either. If you're, say, like on a low oxygen map and you have to have Molly around all the time, you're probably just going to go over there, get all the resources you can, and go dump them right into Molly immediately. And you're not going to be using Deep Pockets at all. It's mostly best for large maps, specifically on Scout. And for that, it's not going to be like a great pick. It really doesn't do much for most classes. I'd probably put this maybe D tier for most players, unless you're playing Scout, then it's probably like C tier. It's not bad with Scout, because like I said, you can, move around, get all your stuff, or even Driller, depending on the map. All right, up next we got Elemental Insulation. This makes it so you have passive resistance towards all elements. 20% at tier 1, 25% at tier 2, and 30% at tier 3. This provides damage reduction towards fire, frost, electricity, poison, radiation, heat temperature, and cold temperature. This does not give you any sort of resistance towards melee attacks, explosives, or kinetic energy. So anything like the swamp's mushrooms that spit out poison, you'll have resistance against. Magma core's fire, you'll have damage resist against that. If there's electricity from... if there's any electricity from the crystals, you'll have passive damage resistance towards that. This also counts towards certain enemies' abilities. Poison spit from the Praetorians, or the radiation from any of the Praetorians in the radioactive area. You'll have damage resistance towards that. You'll have partial damage resistance towards acid spitters, specifically the acid, the poison from it, but not actually the hit. The hit will still count as full damage. Radioactive exploders, you will have damage resist towards the radiation, but not the explosion. Bulk detonators, you'll have resistance towards the fire, but not the actual explosion itself. And things like the frost bombers, you will have damage resist towards the frost, but not actually the hit. It also just doesn't work against certain enemies, like web spitters count as just kinetic damage, menaces count as kinetic damage, dreadnoughts also count towards that. The jellyfish count as melee damage, the spitballers also count as kinetic damage, and the shellbacks count as explosive damage. So there is certain things that this just doesn't work against. However, I pretty much always take Elemental Insulation. It's just so useful because you're just going to be taking less damage from the environment, as well as you'll be taking less damage from about half of the total enemies that you're going to be fighting. And it's pretty useful just to have your shields up, or just to not take that much health damage. And I think it's a really great ability. I don't know if I would say it's S tier though. It might be. I might put it in low S. It's not necessary on every map. On certain maps, it's certainly better on though. Like Magma Core, I always take this. It's just one of the things I always take, regardless of what type of mission it is. Same with if I get the swamp. Like, always take this just to not take that passive poison damage as much. And I usually take it on most maps, as I said. I take it on most builds. It's pretty good on everybody. All right, up next is Friendly, and this is only a tier 1 ability. This makes it so, through the power of friendship, both of you take 50% less damage from friendly fire. So you can't hurt your teammates, and your teammates can't hurt you as much. This can be pretty good if you're playing with inexperienced players, especially players that don't usually play FPS games that much, and they want to play on, a little bit of a higher difficulty. Then it can be pretty useful because sometimes teammates panic, they start shooting like crazy. They might have big AoE weapons, like they're running the overclock Fat Boy with the grenade launcher on Engineer, and there's a good chance they'll hurt you with it. So it's kind of useful for that. However, if you have a team that's not shooting each other very often at all, if you're all pretty experienced dwarfs, you probably don't need Friendly. Friendly is not a class. Friendly is not a perk that I take all that often. There's only been certain days when I've taken this because I've just routinely had random teammates firing randomly and, hurting me, taking my health out, taking my shields out. But overall, you usually don't need Friendly. I would say Friendly's probably D tier. I mean, it is only a tier 1, so it's pretty easy to get, and it's great for newer players, especially people that don't have the best aim, or using, like I said, big AoE weapons. Oh, also, since it says that you take 50% reduced damage from friendly fire, this also does not mean this doesn't stack. You can't just blow yourself up with like the engineer's grenade launcher and have it count as, well, you did all the friendly fire damage and you can't take friendly fire and you half the damage. It doesn't work like that. It's just, if you hurt yourself with something like that, you will take reduced damage, but it won't stack. You're not going to just become immune to your own explosions or something. If that was the case, then this weapon might kind of be decent on some sort of weird bomber suicide dwarf build. I think that could actually be pretty fun to play, but be very, very weird. Up next is It's a Bug Thing. This makes it so anybody standing within 2 meters or 5 meters at tier 2 of a loot bug will make it explode. As a lot of people have pointed out, this one's not that good. You can kill loot bugs very easily. They don't fight back at all. You can just hit them with your pickaxe. A power attack from the pickaxe will instantly kill them regardless of difficulty. And otherwise, it's something like 5 hits from a pickaxe will kill them, so you don't need to use any ammo. Yeah, if they're on the ceiling, you might have to shoot them down with your pistol, assault rifle, whatever you're using to get the extra stuff. There is some use to this if one person has it on the team, and it's going to be another, like, third perk. You don't really take it unless you just kind of want to have it type of deal. It's not like a high tier one, and that's maybe taking it on like a scout that can jump around the map just with their zipline gun, doesn't want to use their ammo to kill loot bugs all the way around. That's about the only real use of it, and even then it's still pretty niche and still pretty not that good. So yeah. Also, this doesn't work on hoarders. If it worked on hoarders, there might actually be a reason to take it with scout. Like, can you imagine that if just a hoarder runs out and you can just zip line right over to it and kill it and get all the minerals immediately? That'd actually be pretty good then. Then you might want to take this just on the off chance that happens. But otherwise, not really. All right, so the next one is Resupplier. And this one makes it so that you can resupply faster by 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50% depending on the tier. And you will also get extra health from resupplying 10%, 15%, 20%, or 25% depending on the tier as well. This one is actually just kind of a nice overall quality of life passive, because you might need to resupply faster than what you plan if there's a swarm going on, if you're running low on ammo, if you guys just barely got enough nitro to call in a resupply and somebody needs to get, their gun loaded. It can be pretty nice for that. And the bonus health is always great too. There's nothing really like fancy about this perk. It's just kind of useful and can work on pretty much anybody. I've taken it with like Scout a couple times. I've taken it with Driller a couple times. I think I've taken it with Engineer a couple times too, because, you might need to grab that extra turret ammo. So like, it's kind of useful for that, and bonus health is nice. There's not really like any sort of downside to this, but it's not a tremendous upside either. Also, once you resupply, it will reload all of your guns instantly, which is just kind of a nice bonus, especially if you've been routinely running out of ammo. So that's pretty good too. So like overall, I would probably put this into like B tier. It's an okay perk. It works pretty well on everybody, and there's not really a downside to it. So B tier seems kind of fair for it. All right, up next we have Second Wind. This makes it so after sprinting for so long, then you get a speed boost that will just continue the more you run. So the speed boost takes 5 seconds at tier 1, and you get 8% bonus movement speed. At tier 2, it's still 8%, but it's on a lower cooldown at 4.5%. At tier 3 and tier 4, it's at 12% movement speed, but at 4.5 seconds and 4 seconds. So the fastest you can be is 12% faster at 4 seconds of sprinting. This one I actually find pretty useful. I run this one pretty often because bonus movement speed is kind of nice. You can outrun certain bugs. You don't have to worry about them catching up to you right away. You can't outrun every bug with every class with this. And certain classes it feels a little bit unnecessary. I usually like taking it on the slower classes like Gunner, just so that I can move around a bit quicker. It works well on everybody though. You can run it on Scout and still be able to run a little bit faster, really survive if you want to be like a Scout medic type of build, so that you can, heal up your team if they go down and still have great mobility so you won't get caught. You can use it with Engineer so you can easily get to your turrets, or just run away if you start getting overrun. It's not a bad ability on anybody. I find it pretty useful. It's not like necessary on anybody either though. So I think I'm going to put this one up into high B tier. It's pretty decent overall, I'd say. All right, up next we got Strong Arm. This makes it so you throw flares with more force and throw heavy objects with more force. At tier 1, you'll be throwing flares 20% further and have 10% further heavy objects thrown. So at tier 2, the only upgrade is 10% further force range, I guess, throwing flares further. At tier 3, it's 40%, and then your heavy objects actually become 20%, so you can throw them further. And then at tier 4, heavy objects stay the same, but you have a 50% further flare throwing distance. This one's another perk that's really not necessary on most classes. It's kind of a little bit useful depending on the situation. Like, you can throw certain heavy objects up areas where you couldn't before. You can throw them across gaps that you wouldn't be able to before. It's a little bit useful for collecting things like gunk seeds because you can more easily grab them and toss them, or aquarics or something like that. It's not bad, at least for those missions. For every other mission where you aren't picking up and throwing things, or where you can just call Molly right over to you, like an egg hunt or something, it's not really necessary. And throwing flares further isn't really necessary either, especially if you're playing a class like Scout where you have the flare gun. So it's okay. It's similar to I would say it's similar to Born Ready. I think it's a little bit weaker than Born Ready. It does have some use on some missions, but it's pretty niche in those missions. All right, up next we got Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth just gives you more health from getting red sugar. 10% for tier 1, 20% for tier 2, and 30% for tier 3. And on tier 3, you also get 20% bonus movement speed for 10 seconds when getting sugar. This can actually be really good, especially on higher difficulties where you want to ration out your supplies better. You potentially don't need it, especially with certain classes. Gunner doesn't need it so much with their shield. Scout may not need it either because of their high mobility. It does, it's not bad on anybody, but it can be particularly useful on certain classes. And it's just passive more health, so there's no downside to it. As well as the bonus movement speed, even if you're out of combat, it's still kind of nice. You can use it to just get to the next area faster. To get, whatever your mission is done a little bit quicker. This also does manage resources a bit better too, because if you only need to take, let's say, 2 hits from the sugar, then you can, and then you can still leave whatever's left over for somebody else that might need it. So you can ration out your supplies much better with Sweet Tooth. And overall, this is just a pretty good perk on everyone. I think I'd probably put it into lower A tier. Potentially better than Second Wind, even though I take Second Wind more often than Sweet Tooth. But Sweet Tooth is just pretty good, and it doesn't really matter how skilled you are at the game. Sweet Tooth is always going to be a pretty decent option, unless you're just insane level where you're just not getting hit by anything. All right, up next we have Thorns. Thorns is another great ability that I use on almost everybody, I would say. So Thorns just makes it so if anything hits you, it takes damage back. At tier 1, this is 6 damage, tier 2, it's 12 damage, tier 3, it's 18 damage, and tier 4, it's 24 damage. This does have a cooldown on it, though. It has a 0.75 second cooldown, so it isn't just if enemies keep hitting you, they'll keep taking damage. And if you get swarmed, you can still die pretty quickly from this, but it is pretty useful because just having the passive damage hitting enemies is pretty nice. It's particularly good against the swarmers or the shockers, the little jellyfish guys. Any of them hitting you will just instantly die. That's great. It's not necessary on every class though. Driller's weapons have pretty good AoE damage with the flamer and with the flamethrower and the cryo gun. If you're using the autocannon with Gunner, you really don't need it either. But it is just kind of a nice quality of life ability, and it's pretty useful for just getting rid of all sorts of small things. I'd probably put it up into A tier. It's pretty good. All right, up next we have Unstoppable. This makes it so environmental slowdown is reduced by 20%, 30%, or 40%, or 50%, depending on what tier this is. And you can carry heavy objects faster, 10%, 15%, 20%, or 25% at max. This can be pretty useful in certain maps. If you're moving aquarics, or if you just keep finding a whole bunch of pearls or jadits or something in the walls, you can move them pretty fast. You can also just move faster through various environmental effects like spiderwebs, goo, heavy snow, the earthquakes, the frost praetorians, the death cloud stuff. Anything like that, you can just move through faster than you normally would, which can actually help in quite a few areas, like the earthquakes and like the sandstorms or snowstorms can be kind of annoying. Especially if you get a swarm coming on you, you can at least get a little bit away. You can use this on potentially any mission, but it's definitely better on other missions like anyone where you're getting the Aquarics. So it's pretty limited in use. It's not going to be useful all the time on every map, but it does have some use. I would probably put this also somewhere into C tier. With Vampire, when you kill an enemy that is medium size or larger with your melee attack, then you will get health back. At tier 1, this is 2 health. Tier 2 is 3 health. Tier 3 is 4 health. And tier 5 is 5 health. So the only things that don't count as medium or above enemies that you might fight are spawns, swarmers, the jellyfish shockers, hatchlings, or the charged suckers, the things that stick onto like the spider tanks. Those do not count. Same with any sort of neutral creature, so you can't get this from just killing the local wildlife and stuff. Loot bugs too. Since it is melee damage, this doesn't only include the pickaxe. This includes the pickaxe, the power attack from the pickaxe, the drills from the driller, and the impact axe. But the impact axe from the driller works a little bit differently because it hits twice with melee once you hit something, and then once with explosive damage. So if you kill something with the explosion, you won't get the health back from Vampire, but if you kill it with the melee hit, either the first or second melee hit that it counts as hitting it, then you will get the health back from it. Usually Vampire isn't all that great at higher levels because it just doesn't give you enough health. However, it is really strong with particularly two circumstances. Either A, you're using the active perk Berserker, in which case you'll just be able to clear pretty much a whole like swarm with just using the Berserker ability, and you'll get health back from that. The other is using it with the driller and using it with the cryo cannon and then the reinforced drills. I found this to be probably the best use of it because you can freeze everything to where it can't move, pull out your drills and just kill everything really quick and pretty much be able to get all your health back. So with driller, this perk is actually really good. With every other class, it's not as useful. You kind of have to combine it with Berserker to get it to work. Otherwise, you usually don't feel like you're doing a whole lot with it. So I think I'm going to put this maybe B tier overall. It'd probably be A tier for driller, specifically with that combination. Then it's pretty good and I take it pretty often with them. But without that combination, it's all right. All right, and then we have our last passive perk here, which is Veteran Depositor. This makes it so you can deposit faster, as well as you get bonus damage reduction when standing next to Molly. So you deposit by 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50% faster, and you get either 20% or at max 30% more damage resist when standing within 7 meters of depositing points. This counts as Molly or as like the rig or drop pod or anything like that. You do get passive damage resist. Now 7 meters is not all that much. However, this is really good on maps that have the low oxygen. On low oxygen, this is actually a really good perk because you're likely going to be huddling around Molly for the majority of the match. So having just passive damage reduction is pretty nice. Like, this is pretty good on Scout because you're likely going to be running around getting a bunch of materials and you can just deposit them faster. So it's just kind of handy to have that. It's also pretty good on Engineer because you can set up your turrets around Molly and then just hold out in that area where you have passive damage resist, and Engineer is really good at holding an area. So it works pretty well there. Driller and Gunner, not as much. It's still not like a terrible perk or anything because you might, make use of the damage reduction and you might be able to put in materials a little bit faster. That makes it a little bit more convenient to you. Overall, this is probably another like B tier perk. I'd probably put it maybe right there. It's not bad. It's a pretty decent ability on most. Like I said, it's best probably on Scout or potentially Engineer, depending on how you're going to use it. And it's really good on the low oxygen maps. So I think this is where I would put all of the Deep Rock Galactic passive perks. most of them are pretty good. Even when you're getting down to these weird niche ones, they do have some use and they can still be used. And I do use some of them sometimes, but not as much as you're going to see like these higher up perks being used, where you have some pretty strong ones and some pretty good ones that are, you know, just kind of nice quality of life improvements. So thank you guys so very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me what your thoughts are on the passive perks in Deep Rock Galactic and where you would put them. I would love to hear that down in the comments below. We can have a discussion down there. And if you're new here, be sure that you're subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I post any sort of new videos out here. And if you'd like to go one step beyond that and support the channel even further, you can go over to the merch store or go over to the Patreon, pick up some merch there or pledge there. It's only $1 to get early access to these type of videos. And every amount helps. Thanks everybody who does that. I really do appreciate it. And I will talk to all you guys next time. Till then, stay cool and bye.